technically that's a mistake. They had shortened the sentence and they put words together and it didn't really work. Instead of archetypal, it doesn't really work unless you really read the original sentence, which is much longer than this one. So I would suggest, rather than the word archetypal, I would suggest the word mythical. I'll read it like that. So Plato in the Symposium has provided a mythical image of homosexual love. Quote, each of us when separated having one side only like a flat fish is but the indenture of a man. He is always looking for his other half, unquote. That's an old translation. There is an archetype embedded in this image, and another line of approach will amplify it further. One of Jung's favorite portrayals of the conjunctio was the alchemical royal pair as typified in the Rosarian woodcut. This image of the royal pair can also be seen in the astrological third sign of the zodiac, Gemini, and in the sixth trump of the tarot called the Lovers. Gemini, the twins, has been traditionally portrayed by two similar-looking men embracing. In addition, the great bisexual magus, Aleister Crowley, has discussed how the sixth tarot trump, quote, refers to Gemini ruled by Mercury. It means the twins, unquote. Thus, in astrology and tarot divination, occult, quote, sciences, unquote, historically contemporaneous with alchemy, there existed two alternate images for the same symbolic position. Gemini, of course, refers to the Greek myth of the Dioscuri, the inseparable twins born from Leda's egg, one mortal and one immortal, and placed in the sky by Zeus as a testament to their love for one another. Therefore, that image of the, quote, union of sames, unquote, articulated by Plato as a basis for homosexual love can be seen really in the figure of Gemini as an amplification, and one image amplifies another. The celestial twins can be seen to express an image in which libido is homosexually organized. Through analyzing such imagos, a homosexual organization of the developing gay personality can be studied. The gay soul figures, that's the most important imago, or not just an image, even though it's called soul figure, but more like a feeling or theme or atmosphere or mood or tone, even. As well as soul figure. Soul tone, soul atmosphere is one I'm very concerned with. No. Anima as soul image is one of the classic formulations of Jung's psychology. But when Aphrodite Urania rules the world of love, the situation of the feminine will be different. Rather than the king with his queen, it is Plato's image of two saints, the image of the star twins, that better reflects the archetypal soul relationship. It is a situation of a man having a special erotic twin, quote, brother, unquote, who is felt to be the, quote, source of inspiration, unquote. I have previously termed this male soul figure the double, a term first proposed by Otto Rank in 1914. It is a different Rank was a psychoanalyst. It is a different same-sex figure than those described by Jung as the shadow or the self, archetypal self, but can and does enter into the constellation of these other archetypes in a way analogous to the role of anima. Actually, the idea of one's soul as a, quote, double, unquote, is ancient and can be traced back to Sumerian and Egyptian writings. For example, in the story of Gilgamesh, a Sumerian tale, Gilgamesh is redeemed from a purposeless life by a strong man named Enkidu, who was specifically created by the gods as, quote, a second image of Gilgamesh. May the image be equal to the time of his heart, unquote. Their love is likened to that between husband and wife, and it is shown as, quote, the paradigm of primary social relationships, colon, male bonding, husband and wife, brother and brother, unquote, in one. Ultimately, it is through passionate love for manly Enkidu, a figure too grand and bright to be a shadow, yet too weak and mortal to be the self, that every inch a man Gilgamesh finds maturity. Ancient Egypt provides more rich imagery concerning the double as soul figure. The Egyptians believed that within each person there existed an invisible being from whom emanated the source of life and breath. They called this figure the Ka, and depicted it as an idealized image of the person. Doubled is their mistake, just an idealized image of the person. Your Ka was born, or they at least didn't understand the concept. Your Ka was born into life with, this means an image of the person, called the Ka. Your Ka was born into life with you, always embracing and protecting you with love, with his love, and connecting you with the world of paradise and with the gods. The Ka served in this capacity because, as the image of the loved soul, it was a body itself which contained within it a soul, just as a person contained the Ka within his or her body. The soul of the Ka was called the Ba, and it was portrayed as a small bird with the idealized face and head of the person. In Egyptian belief, the Ba had flown down from heaven during pregnancy and incarnated the Ak, the light of God, into the, quote, body, unquote, of the Ka. The Ba inseminated the Ka with this seed of light from which flowed the waters of life, animating the soul. In this way, it was actually the great Ak which brings life to mortal flesh, only to be taken back to heaven with the person's death. However, the Egyptians held an even more sophisticated view of the soul and its workings. They held that the Ka was actually the Ta, that's their stupid thing again, and should actually be sematory. So they replaced the word sematory with the word Ta. That's wrong. It's a summation that overall calls a summary summation of all the development of all the 14 aspects. So they made an error when they replaced that word. It should actually not be the word Ta at all. So they held that the Ka was actually the summatory expression of 14 constituent aspects, each also considered a Ka. These 14 Kas were grouped in 7 pairs as the incarnation of 7 distinct Bas, meaning each Ba produced 2 Kas, each with its own aspect. The qualities of the 7 Ka pairs can be seen to portray a developmental sequence: subsistence and nutrition, creative power and greenness, penetration and consideration, venerability and vassalage, force and worth, magic and illumination, splendor and radiance. Through development of these 14 aspects or qualities of the Ka, the soul could be, quote, perfected, unquote. Perfection of the Ka was seen as a spiritual, quote, ladder, unquote, up which a person could move and obtain a form of self-realization, imagined as eternal residence with the Ka soul in paradise. A spiritual ladder from the earth to heaven was imagined as belonging to the twin gods, Horus and Seth. They helped the aspirant up the ladder and were its lords. Horus and Seth are among the most ancient of Egyptian gods, and were seen to be opposites as they represented light and dark, just and unjust, in and out, and all such dyads. Their eternal struggle, yet ultimate reconciliation, has been aptly described by Joseph Campbell, quote, mythologically representing the inevitable dialectic of temporality. Horus and Seth are forever in conflict, whereas in the sphere of eternity, beyond the veil of time and space, where there is no duality, they are at one. Unquote. What does that mean, they are at one? Joseph is going to tell us. The union of Horus and Seth was known by the Egyptians as, quote, the secret of the 2 partners, unquote. That's why I don't hear about it. I keep it secret too. The united oneness of Horus and Seth was called, quote, the double God. There was that image I showed you before. It was called, quote, the double God, unquote. Pictured as the heads of Horus and Seth on one body. Scenes exist in which the 2 men are shown tying together 2 rope-like plants into a binding knot. That is a kind of wedding scene. Finally, it should be noted that texts exist in which Horus and Seth are specifically likened to a man and his Ka, and also to a man and his sexual partner. The relationship between a man and his Ba soul is also repeatedly connected to that between husband and wife in the dialogue of a world-weary man with his Ba, in the latter text, circa 2000 BCE. The Ba says to his man, quote, in that stillness shall I light upon you, meaning when he's dead. Then united we shall form the abode, unquote, of spiritual rebirth, unquote. Clearly then, the Egyptian beliefs of soul development required a struggle between opposites, that essential feature of the conjunctio. Thus, here in the ancient Egyptian, we have the philosophy of the unconscious and of soul-making, based on a marriage of man and manly soul double, a sacred union animated by the male eros, which leads to the integration of opposites. Quote, your soul, becomes conscious little by little in your incarnate Ka. Our texts tell you that, in quote, he rises from your vertebrae, from the dual fire in them, that is, that, quote, he thickens your spiritual heart, opens your mouth and eyes to the real, that, in quote, being realized in you and having at last stripped you of your transient names, freed you from the humanity that is in your members, unquote, he will, in quote, reveal your true face, in quote, your face of mud, and make, in quote, make you one of the cause of universal wars, unquote. The idea of gaining this, quote, perfection, unquote, through a gay sort of love that goes down from the original Egyptian and Sumerian ideas, and in subsequently recorded mythologies. Let's change these sentences. It irritates me, I'm sorry. Plato, of course, discourses at length on how this love leads to union with God, and similar ideas occur in Gnostic and Sufi thought. When the eye of homosexual libido is opened, its manifestations can be perceived. From studying such phenomena, an accurate conception of a gay male soul figure and his workings and psyche can be reconstructed. This is what I mean by the mood or tone, that phrase, when the eye of homosexual libido is open. I really kind of mean when one can take the viewpoint from that position, as if the eye is seeing from its viewpoint as being open. That's kind of really what I'm trying to say. They juggle a little with the phrase, and that's the attempt to get at that sensibility. Again, stuff never written down before, believe it or not, published anyway, believe it or not. No one would have dared. And even in 1988 when I wrote this, much as I did publish it. Okay, the homosexual organized ego self-axis. So we're going to find out more about that. In Egyptian mythology, the Ka, another error, the Ka was not seen to be God. They're stupid things. The Ka was not God. In Egyptian mythology, the Ka was not seen to be God, though through one's Ka one could come to. But see how the sense is much more sand, like bad a few of those words they just thought they conveniently trash because they could. Idiots. They think they're improving, right? I know, isn't that weird? In Egyptian mythology, the Ka was not seen to be God, though through one's Ka one could come to organized ego self-axis. In Egyptian mythology, the Ka was not seen to be God, though through one's Ka one could come to God. Likewise, through his love of Enkidu, Gilgamesh finally reaches his initiation as a shaman. Likewise, through a beautiful youth, Socrates knows truth. In his, quote, angel soul, unquote, Ibn Arabi finds Allah. Further, as the Egyptian idea shows, the Ka soul vis-a-vis the ego personality is itself a dynamic figure that evolves from lower to higher forms in an interactive relationship with the spiritual seeker. I just love that relational quality, by the way. So get beyond the idea, I'm sorry, I'm coming. I'm getting beyond the idea of the double as a thing, and gradually getting more now into exploring the double as a process, as a form of relatedness. I really love that transition. This dynamic articulates an ego self-axis whose patterns of evolution occur through a cyclic rising and sinking of homosexual libido. I put in, you see, Jung's transformation because that's his main theoretical statement of this phenomenology of the internal rising and sinking of libido and the development of the conscious personality. And by pointing that out, I'm actually trying to show a moral equivalence in Jungian handling of gay material that is equal to the way Jung has handled heterosexual material, and a direct slap in the face to Jung's own mishandling of homosexual material. They allowed that to go in. Okay, so it shows they weren't just pigs, okay? So they probably thought, just like you know at this point, they probably were thinking to themselves that it's such an outrageous piece, we want to be daring, but we got to do a little clipping of it. We got to mute it, we got to fuck it up a little bit. So they didn't do every fuck up they could, saying, this is really daring to do this. In the context I mentioned, it's still a picture that the field is still fairly homophobic. And this is not merely what it looks like on the surface, this is really in-your-face discourse I'm leveling here. And this is the key, this is the theoretical center of my statement, this statement. I'm going for the key, Jung's key theoretical statement, and saying that homosexual phenomenology is no fundamentally different in terms of how Jung analyzes that heterosexual material, or analyzes it in a heterosexual way. We can morally equally go in a homosexual way. Here's a little taste of that. I just put in the article, I'm just wrote a little taste that could go on like I do in the dissertation, a whole damn book, which it turns out to be a whole big book on it too. This is really, this is the center of the theoretical substance of it, just to let you know right there. So now I expand on it a little bit. Jung formulated the concept of eros, which is a big idea in his notions, as the secret operator of the transformations of the libido, meaning the inner energy of the psyche, by which individuation, the development of the subjective self, occurs. Eros is a figure who guides this process and also appears as the Egyptian thought, as they're mangling it, and also appears as the Egyptian thought, the Greek Hermes, and the alchemical Mercurius, meaning you see the same figure over and over. It's what Jung called Eros. He just picked that particular name, but he meant a figure that shows up in different times and places. He used the word Eros to describe this kind of transpersonal figure. He took it from the Greek. It didn't exactly mean, though, the Greek figure the way he uses it. The Greek figure is an example that, along with Thoth, along with the other examples that I cite here, which Jung also does. So doesn't mean, when he uses the word Eros, he doesn't mean exactly the Greek idea. He means this analytic term for a personification of the inherent intelligence within the intrinsic libido.